Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates post-game live. Been a few days here since I've last spoken. Hope everyone had a Merry Christmas, has had a good time, and has stayed safe. Unfortunately, it hasn't been a great period for the Warriors since I last spoke, having lost their Christmas Day battle to the Los Angeles Lakers with that Austin Reeves game-winning layup in the final seconds where he beat Andrew Wiggins off the dribble. And now I speak just minutes after the Warriors have lost again, this time to the Los Angeles Clippers, 102-92 with the Intuit Dome on Friday night. Daniel Hall in the comments says, fun, fake comeback. It was to a degree. The Warriors got within 3 with 2.5 minutes to play, but were unable to complete the comeback effort there, which saw them trail 81-62 at the end of the third, entering the fourth. And then, that comeback effort got to within 3, and the Clippers were able to steady and ended up rounding out a 10-point victory there. But it was the tale of two stories for the Warriors, really, in this game, where their veterans playing without Stephen Curry and Draymond Green, their other veterans, aside from that story duo, just flat out didn't turn up whatsoever and really, really struggled. And then their young guys, led by Jonathan Kaminga, were excellent and were part of that fight-back effort in the fourth quarter. That unit that Steve basically went to in the fourth quarter, where it was Pods, Moody, Lindy Waters, Kaminga, Trace Jackson Davis, very young lineup, got them back into the game there. That meant that Andrew Wiggins, Dennis Schroeder were both stapled to the bench for the entirety of the fourth quarter. Buddy Hield came out for a couple of minutes, but was largely useless, let's put it that way. So a really, really disappointing performance from the veteran players, because if they had just brought some kind of an average performance to the game, then the Warriors might have actually won that, given how they were pretty good defensively, particularly the intensity in that fourth quarter where they forced a bunch of turnovers. The Clippers did shoot over 53% from the field, so they were efficient, but they also turned the ball over 21 times, and that kept the Warriors in the game. The fact Golden State were, again, only down 3 with 2.5 minutes remaining is quite incredible, given for the game they shot, was it 36.3% from the floor or something like that? Just checking that now. 36.8% from the field, 35 of 95 overall, and then 7 of 38, 18.4% from beyond the arc. Again, the Clippers shot over 53% from the floor. The fact the Warriors were able to remain so close came down to the fact that Clippers had 21 turnovers to the Warriors 14, and the Warriors also had 19 offensive rebounds to the Clippers 6. So that meant that the Warriors got 20 more field goal attempts than the Clippers, and were still unable to capitalize on that, and unable to capitalize on a career best performance from Jonathan Kaminga. We saw his performance against the Houston Rockets going a few weeks ago when Steph and Draymond were both out, and he was able to deliver a career-high 33 points on that occasion and got the Warriors to a 99-93 victory. He had Andrew Wiggins supporting him on that occasion. In this one, he just didn't have anyone. He did not have anyone, and we have to remember Jonathan Kaminga didn't even start this game. He came off the bench. Steve went to the starting front court of Wiggins, Kyle Anderson, and Trace Jackson Davis, which, again, the veterans, Wiggins, Anderson, Buddy Hield, Dennis Schroeder, just did not stand up whatsoever. And just one of those guys needed to be helpful, to be somewhat complementary to what Kaminga was doing, because it was otherwise like Kaminga scored over a third of Golden State's points here. And in that fourth quarter, it was all him. He had 5 assists as well to go with his 34 points, got to the line 14 times, made 11, which was crucial and nice to see, given so many of his free throw shooting issues so far this season. Just one of those guys, one of Wiggins, Schroeder, Hield, had to come through and provide something, and they flat out did not. Those guys combined for 17 points on 30 shots. 17 points on 30 shots from, a veteran trio out there, obviously without Steph and Draymond. One of those guys just had to come up with something, and they flat out couldn't. They went 2 of 15 from beyond the arc. Schroeder goes 7 points on 3 of 11 shooting, 0 of 6 from three-point range, and majority of those threes were pretty open. Like the way the Clippers were playing defense with Zubac, holding back, playing drop coverage in the paint. Schroeder was getting open looks, just coming off screens, getting into either wide open threes or wide open mid-ranges, and he hit a couple of middies, but other than that, again, 3 of 11 shooting, missed all his threes, which were, again, largely wide open. Buddy Hield goes 2 of 8, 1 of 6 from beyond the arc, and Wiggins just a disappointing performance from him. 2 of 11, 1 of 3, 5 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, -16. Hield was a -16. Schroeder was a -16. Then you look at the bench unit. Kaminga was a -5, but he did play 37 minutes and was obviously the Warriors' best player. Moody, I don't think Moody played all that well, but he was +6. Pajemski was +6. Lindy Waters played 16 minutes, did not make a shot, was 0 of 6 from 3 himself, but was a +16. So it was the bench unit, the young guys that got it done for the Warriors. And I think it was just an intensity thing. I thought early in the third quarter there, the Warriors were down 6 at halftime. Early in the third quarter there with the starters, that was the first time where I really looked at this and thought, hey, there's a lack of intensity and a lack of effort right now, which is something like usually I can complain and be disappointed in the execution with what the Warriors are doing, but very rarely can I be critical of the effort and the intensity. And I just thought early third quarter there, that's where the Clippers won the game. The Warriors were kind of in it in the first half. The Clippers went on a run late in the first half and then went on a run early in the third quarter, and all of a sudden the lead ballooned out beyond 15, closer to 20 points. And that was ultimately the game, because by the time Kaminga, Pajemski, and the bench unit came in, the Warriors were too far down, and they tried their best in the fourth quarter, and Steve lent on Kaminga as heavily as we've ever seen, but unfortunately it just wasn't enough in the end. A few comments from you guys here. Jamu, that's how I'm going to pronounce it, says, happy Friday, mate. Happy Friday, mate. Sorry, but the era of Curse, Steve, SC30 and Day are done. I'm assuming you're saying Draymond there. Whether we trade JK or not, interesting perspective. I think it's obviously a fine balance at the moment, because it's almost really predictable now that if Steph and Draymond are out of the lineup, Kaminga just explodes. And he's had 2 performances now where he's gone for 33 and 34 points, been really efficient, got to the free throw line. They've just put the ball in his hands and let him go to work. And you know what? It's actually worked pretty well. Now, you can argue in this game it didn't lead to a win, but it actually was kind of a massive positive when they did get the ball in his hands in the fourth quarter. I mean, they won that quarter 30-21 and got back into the game. So I don't know. It's really interesting. Van Decker says these fake comebacks hurt a lot more than a blowout. I suppose it is the hope that gets you, like the idea that Moses Moody hits that 3 off a beautiful find from Kaminga in the corner there, where the Clippers defense, obviously Kaminga absolutely going off, was unstoppable at the rim there on multiple occasions. The Clippers loaded up on him, sent 2 or 3 guys, left Moody wide open in the corner. Moody knocks down the 3, gets the Warriors to within 3, and you think, hey, they've actually got a chance here, and then that's quickly snuffed out. So it is the hope that is obviously really disappointing, when otherwise it just looked like a pretty standard 15 to 25 point loss there that was incoming at the end of the third quarter. Jamu says, actually, I prefer fake comebacks. At least it's exciting instead of a blowout that I turn off the game. Well, at least there's something being able to watch Kaminga and the rest of the young guys go to work and actually get the opportunity to thrive and play well and have that increased opportunity. Then Dex says, Kaminga and Steph can't play together. It's like he's a shell of himself when playing with Steph. Yeah, there needs to be some kind of balance there. They need to find some way to be able to unlock Kaminga while he's playing next to Steph. And it's really interesting, the fact that I think we've all looked at Kaminga and thought that he's being held back by Steve Kerr and the limited opportunity and the up and down opportunities that he's received throughout his career so far. Maybe it's an element now of Kaminga's held back by it. Not Kaminga's held back by Steph, but Kaminga is held back by the way that Steph is utilized and the focus that Kerr obviously has in the offense running around Steph, and being, we saw those comments last week about, that were directed at Kaminga, where Steve was saying, we don't want mid-range pull-up jump shots with 15 on the shot clock. Steph Curry is out on the floor. We try and find him. We pass, and we don't look for those inefficient shots, which Kaminga can take sometimes and he can make sometimes as well. So that's a clear directive there, that this is a struggle to be able to find the balance between, having Steph Curry, who's the greatest player in franchise history, obviously, and having Jonathan Kaminga, who's the team's most talented young player, and who is arguably, I think he's a better natural scorer than Wiggins. Like, I think ideally he'd be the second leading scorer on this team, the second best scorer on this team, the second guy you go to. But again, finding that balance between unlocking Kaminga and also being able to play him with Steph effectively, that's obviously a real struggle at the moment. Then Decker says, Buddy, Schroeder, and Wiggins, absolutely unacceptable. Yeah, I'm really disappointed. Because, again, I'll keep saying it. Like, they just need one of those guys to play well. I'm particularly disappointed in Schroeder because this was his opportunity. Okay, no Steph. That means I can have the ball in my hands a lot more, which I prefer to do. I can run a heap of pick and rolls. And again, it just didn't really work out. And once again, the amount of times like Zubac was just hanging out in the paint and going, under screens and just, playing drop coverage, and Schroeder wasn't able to take advantage. That was disappointing. Jamu in response to Thandeka says that's because when Curry is on, we play strictly motion offense, which alters JK's game, limiting his strengths. Yeah, like Kaminga I know he's done a lot of work on trying to fit in within the Warrior offense, but he's just simply not a Golden State type player. Like, he is literally get the ball in his hands and let him make plays. And in games like this where Steph's not playing, like, that's fine. You can do that. You can say, all right, we've got really no other offense. This is our only option. And you know what? It's actually semi-effective. So let's go to it over and over again. Let's just give JK the ball, spread everything out, and let him go to work, right? And again, it's effective. It's almost like, again, there's been these comparisons in the past, and I don't want to make it again, but it's almost like the Bucks with Giannis, where, they can just give him the ball and say, this guy's so dominant at the rim that if we just space the floor and have shooters everywhere, then that can just be an effective offense without doing anything else. And so I'm not saying Kaminga's Giannis, but it's very similar in terms of we can just give the ball to this guy and he can get downhill and he's pretty unstoppable at the rim. He did get blocked by Zubac once or twice, but overall, like, he goes 11 of 19 from the floor and he's 11 of 14 from the free throw line. Like, he is dominant there. So that's the thing. Like, you can run an offense like that, but the alternative is obviously what the Warriors have done so successfully across the course of the past 10, 12 years is the motion offense, is having Steph run around screens and stuff like that. And that's worked so well. I think obviously they've just got to try and find a balance here before it's too late of having that motion offense while also dialing in some plays where it's like, okay, we're just going to let Kaminga go and let him spread his wings and essentially do whatever he wants, basically, because we've seen in these games where Steph's out, it actually kind of works. Thandeka says our bench has collapsed compared to the first 15 games. Yeah, it's been disappointing, but like, the bench was better today. It was the starters and the veteran players that struggled. Young Wes says, I'm surprised Kaminga didn't start this game. Yeah, it's obviously disappointing that Kyle Anderson again gets the start, and it's a bit weird, considering that Slow-Mo usually is just getting DNPs now when Draymond's in the lineup. So it's like he's just catapulting from DNPs to being in the starting unit. I honestly think it's a factor where Steve's too scared to play Kaminga and Trace together in the starting lineup. Now, he did it throughout the entirety of the fourth quarter, essentially. And again, it worked. So I think he should go to that when Draymond's out. I think it should be Kaminga and Trace in the starting, particularly when Steph's out as well. Like, what have you got to lose, really, when Steph and Draymond are out? You might as well start your young guys and see what you've got there at the 4-5 combination. So I think that's the factor. Like, they want that veteran presence in there with Kyle Anderson. But the Warriors, like, when Schroeder, Wiggins, Hill don't have it going, like, the Warriors just need an injection of offense. And ultimately, at the end of the day, Kaminga played 37 minutes. So he still played a lot and still played the amount of minutes you would have assumed, I suppose, coming into this game without Draymond. It's just the fact that he didn't start, which is, again, a weird one. A few more comments from you guys here. Thandex says 12-3 to 15-15. We have to pick it up, and the West is loaded. Yeah, Warriors down to 10th in the standings. A 12-3 start and a 3-12 now in the final in the past 15 games. Very disappointing. Suns tomorrow is obviously another challenge, although they're struggling themselves. They're 15-15 as well. Sacramento have obviously just fired Mike Brown, so they're in a lot of trouble as well. So the Warriors just fighting really to retain a play-in tournament spot at this stage, which is obviously very disappointing from the 12-3 start where we thought, okay, at bare minimum, this team is going to be a top 6 seed. And since then, it's been an absolute disaster. Thandecker also asked, would you trade Draymond? I don't think he's untouchable in trade talks. You see performances like that from Kaminga and you think, okay, is it just time we just, put him into the starting lineup? And this is what happened last time. He had that 33-point performance against the Rockets, led the Warriors to victory against like the second or third best team in the West. And Steve said, all right, then we'll give you a starting spot. We'll play you over Draymond. And then it lasted a couple of games and that was it. So that like going back to that was just really disappointing for me. That was really disappointing, the fact that happened. The fact that he gave him the starting spot and then just ripped it away straight away without really seeing where it led. maybe it's a factor now of like Steve knows that JK and Steph just don't work together. So maybe it's a case of you want to try and separate those guys as much as you can. But at the end of the day, like Steph should be playing 30 plus minutes and Kaminga should probably be playing 30 plus minutes. So those guys have to overlap in some way, shape, or form. In terms of trading Draymond, I don't know. You'd have to get something pretty good back. And I don't know what that is when, like, I don't know, like you've got Draymond making, what is it, about 25 million? Like, is that to get something good, you're going to have to probably get someone back who's making 40 plus million. And then you'd have to add other salaries, potential draft picks. Like, it would just take a fair bit, I think, and it would be pretty difficult. And obviously, it'd be hugely controversial given his history with the franchise, given his history with Steph, and therefore I just don't see it happening. But I probably agree that he's not untouchable. Like, you would trade him for someone. Like, there's players out there you would trade him for, but whether the other team is willing to do that is the other question. I just think there's too many complications to the point where it's probably unlikely to happen. Johnny says, if anyone say DFS or Cam Johnson, you need expiring contracts. Young West says, Guy Santos played a Guy sliding 4 minutes 50 in the third quarter. I thought that was almost like Steve waving the white flag at that point, and he wasn't good. It wasn't good in those less than 5 minutes. And also we got a Quinton Post sighting in the last 49 seconds. He came out, and that was actually his debut for Golden State after playing plenty in the G League so far this season. He had a 3-point attempt and unfortunately didn't make it. A few other comments here. Shai says, trade for Foxman for Wiggs, Moody, GP2, 2 firsts and 2 seconds. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in Sacramento. Obviously, they've made the drastic change of axing Mike Brown, who maybe the Warriors should look at bringing Mike Brown back into the fold as an assistant. I don't think that will happen given they've only just brought in Stotts and Stackhouse during the offseason, but maybe there's something there. In terms of De'Aaron Fox, I don't know. Does a Curry-Fox backcourt work? I don't know. Like, what have you then got defensively? What happens with Schroeder in that situation? I feel like he just becomes pretty much like you just don't need him at that point. Like, if you've got Curry and Fox, why do you need Schroeder? I suppose he could be a 6-man as a third guard, but I don't know. Like, I think you'd try. So you're saying Wiggs, Moody, GP2. I'm not even sure if that works given Moody's contract and poison pill situation. I don't know. Fox interests me because he's just another guy that can go and make plays for you and another source of offense. Like, how many guys do the Warriors have right now that can give you 30 plus? Really, it's only Steph, and like Wiggins isn't giving you 30 plus. Kaminga's giving you 30 plus when Steph doesn't play. Like, if Steph's out of the lineup and you give him the ball handling opportunity and the creation possibilities, then yeah, he can go for 30 plus, but not really with Steph. So I don't know. It's at this point, like with this Warrior roster, if you are an all-star caliber player capable of putting up 25 plus points a game, then you are going to be in the conversation. To like, I don't think the Warriors should turn their heads and reject anyone that is capable of doing that. Now, whether the trade makes sense or not is a different story, but the Warriors should at least be open to that possibility, and therefore they should be open to De'Aaron Fox and seeing what it would take if that was at all possible. Berserk Monk says the shooting was really bad tonight. It was hard to watch. Yeah, particularly in that first half, like they put up 43 points. The second half wasn't that much, wasn't any better. In fact, the first 3 quarters, they had 62 points through 3 quarters. Like, you're just not going to win a game. You're not going to win a game putting up 62 points in 36 minutes and with 3 of your key guys going 7 of 30 from the floor. Like, you're just not going to win a game. Like, it's surprising the Warriors got within 10, to be honest. Sai also says, Dre, Kaminga, 3 firsts and 2 seconds for Fox. I don't know, like, who's your power forward in that scenario? Really, like, I don't think you'd be giving up Draymond and Kaminga. If you're giving up Draymond, I think part of it is, okay, yes, you bring someone good back, but the second part of it is we also want to keep Kaminga, and we think he's now our long-term starting power forward. Now, what Steph would say about that, I don't know, and is probably part of the reason, in fact, a big reason why I don't think Draymond will get traded. Ghost says, funny how we went from get Steph some help. No, we need to get JK some help. And it's funny. It's literally like a similar performance where, like, Christmas Day game against the Lakers, Steph goes off for 38 and has a great game and a surprisingly good game given his Christmas Day history. And yet the Warriors still lose. And it's like, we need to find this guy some help. And this game, Steph's out, and Kaminga has a very similar performance where everything just runs through him. And the Warriors, if the Warriors had just had another player provide them with some semblance of effective offense, they might have won that game. But instead, like, it's all Kaminga. And yeah, it's a very similar scenario. Like, we go from one game, can we get Steph some help, to the next game, can we get Kaminga some help? Jamu says, you are right. Zubac is way too big for the GSW Hobbits. Not having a big hurts. Two players always overhelping, leaving three-pointers open. I actually thought TJD was better. TJD's been one of like the only positives here over the last 3 or 4 games. Like, I thought he was okay. He had 15 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, 7 of 12 from the floor. Yeah, he was a minus 12, but oh well, so be it. Like, it's better than, Heald, Schroeder, and Wiggins. Zubac was huge, obviously. 17 points, 11 rebounds, 5 block shots as well. I thought TJD was okay. Like, there's been earlier matchups where Zubac, remember that first one where he had like 23 points, 17 rebounds, and 6 assists. Like, he was a bigger factor in that game. He was a factor in this game, no doubt about that. And I do agree the Warriors do need another option there at center. But TJD's been good. I still think the Warriors need a different look there, but at the moment he's playing well, so you've got to give him credit for that. Sai says, do you really see us going past the season win total of 42 with this roster? You're going to have to if you want to make the play. You're probably going to have to just to make the playing tournament, to be honest. Well, what I will say is the schedule will open up. They've got a heap of home games coming up now. Is it like 5 home games in a row or something like that? Someone let me know. It's a heap of home games. They're going to play a bunch of Eastern Conference teams, and the East is obviously a lot worse than the West over the second half of the season. So the schedule will open up. Does that allow them to go on a similar kind of run to last season where they finish, 27-12 over the last 39 games? If they're gonna do that, then they still need to make sure they remain, 1 or 2 games above 500, over the next 15 games until we get to the halfway point of the season. But I don't know. I always try and be optimistic. So yes, I still think this team is capable of getting to like 45, 46 wins. Where that lands them in the West, we'll wait and see. We'll just read some comments here. Sorry, missing out on a heap. Ghost says, but I've been advocating on JK, Moody, and Pods and TJD, and they were the sole reason we got back in the game. Yeah, it's interesting because they play well in a game like this without Steph and Dre, but when Steph and Dre are there, they don't really provide the support that you want, and therefore a lot of fans are clamoring get those guys out for more immediate help. So it's tough. Sandex says, you think the Warriors should bring back Mike Brown? I mean, he was obviously successful at the Warriors, 3 championships in 6 seasons. That 21-22 championship team where he had them as the second best defense in the league, that was obviously, he was a critical part of that. So he was Steve Kerr's right-hand man for so many years. The Warriors, you can just say the Warriors just haven't been the same since Mike Brown left. Like, they just haven't. They obviously made the second round of the playoffs in the first season, didn't make the playoffs at all last season, and we're off to a pretty rough start now in the third season. So I don't know what's going to happen with Mike Brown. He's going to have no shortage of suitors for him as one of the best assistant coaches in the league if he does take up another role there. I suppose it would also give you a guy that could step up into the head coaching role at some point where Steve Kerr either walks or is pushed out of the position by the front office or ownership or whatever else. So I don't know if you're not hiring a guy because of that, but it's something as fans you would look at. There's no doubt about that. Isaac says, this shows that Kaminga needs to be traded to a team that will utilize him properly and give him the opportunity to grow. He's not a good fit with Steph and Draymond. I think a lot of fans would agree with your comments there. Douglas Mike says, I'm not going to be watching any Warrior games until Feb 6, and if I watch any games after that, depends on what they do at the deadline. That's if they haven't completely drowned below 500 by then. Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of fans would look at the recent form and think, okay, we need to make a significant move now. As Jake Fisher of Bleacher Report said earlier today, if the Warriors are going to make a substantial move for a player that's making $40+ million, it's probably going to include Dennis Schroeder, and therefore Schroeder cannot be traded until February 5. So you're going to have to be patient if you want the Warriors to trade for a guy making $40+ million. It's probably not going to happen for another few weeks here, or nearly 6 weeks basically until the close of the deadline there. So I says Mike Brown should be their next move, trade Jerry Stackhouse, or move him as a consultant. I'm going to say you mean Mike Brown, not Mike Breen. We need Mike Brown to fix a systemic issue on defensive side. Okay, fair enough. We need a new system. This isn't 2015 no more, says Stan Decker. Johnny says Warriors are 11th seed. Well, they're equal with the Suns. Both teams 15 and 15. The Spurs have moved ahead after their win today. Berserk Monk says this is why JK nor Pods shouldn't have been untouchable in market and trade. Marketing was a clear fit for this system. JK and Pods would have all the opportunity they want on Utah. Very strong argument for that. The 2024 man says, got a headache listening to you. Kerr tells him to pass the ball. Okay, whatever. Douglas Mike says, get that trade value up, JK. Jamie says, nobody wants Dre. He'd be choking fools out left and right while punching out rookies. There's no doubt that what he's done on and off the floor in the last couple of years would have limited his trade value. But in saying that, his on-court production has still been pretty good, you'd have to say. Now, the last few games haven't been great, but the start of the season when the Warriors were 12-3, Dre was a big part of that, particularly with his defense, which, he's still one of the best and most versatile defenders in the league. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Daniel says, Dre did punch Poole. He's a franchise legend, but not untouchable. Sai says, my argument for Draymond trade is the two-man game between him and Steph is way too predictable. Teams know our next play before we could read it. Look at the Grizzlies blowout and a lot of others. Sai says, Kings hate Warriors, but there'll be an open garage sale in a few weeks. I'm assuming you mean that in regard to Fox, maybe, and potentially getting a trade done there. Thendex says, I think all the teams hate the Warriors. Johnny says, Kings aren't helping the Warriors get better. That's probably a factor in, potential Fox negotiations, or I don't know, can you try and get Keegan Murray or someone like that? Sai says, this juncture they can't help but trade if Warriors put forth a compelling trade offer. There's just a conversation going on here on all the teams that hate the Warriors, basically. Thendex says, must win versus Suns, can't go under 500. Yeah, it's a real drastic, it obviously has been a drastic turnaround, but like when you start 12-3 and then all of a sudden you get back and fall back to 500, that kind of puts an exclamation mark on this recent stretch and how bad it's been. Like the fact that you started 12-3 and now you're back to 500, that does put an exclamation mark on it. And if you go under 500, as the Warriors could if they lose to the Suns tomorrow, then that just reiterates it even further and reiterates the drop-off here that's been so disappointing. Sai says, if Booker is back, Suns game is gone too. They lost today to Dallas without Luka, 98-89. KD went for 35 and they put up 89 points. Sounds like a similar performance to Kaminga in this Warriors game, to be honest. So disappointing loss for them. Booker didn't play. Not sure what his status is whatsoever. But it sounds like the Suns desperately need him back. Steph and Draymond sounds like they are expected to return for Golden State. Matthew says, if we go under 500, we are cooked. Trade everyone. Giant white dude from the Jazz will make us contenders. Get him. Are you talking about Walker Kessler or Markkanen? I'm assuming you might be talking about Kessler because Markkanen cannot be traded until the offseason. Berserk Monk says, started 12-3, now we've gone 3-12. Lol. Matthew said, Suns are cheeks too, not going to lie. Thendex says, after the Suns, we play the Cavs. Yes, that's going to be difficult as well. Jammu says, we're even love it 20 years ago. I'd have taken that. Before the Steph days, this would have been a good result for the Warriors, but you still have Steph Curry. You still have a Steph Curry who showed on Christmas Day that he's capable of putting out massive performances, and the Warriors still need to try and prioritize that as much as they can, while obviously they clearly want to balance their future. They want to have some kind of viable, effective product post Steph and Curry, and I think most fans would suggest that that's getting in the way of prioritizing Steph right now. In fact, I don't think there's any doubt about that. The fact that you have a guy like Steph and at the same time, simultaneously, you have four young guys in Kaminga, Moody, Podziemski, and Trace Jackson-Davis, who are all, relatively strong, consistent parts of the rotation, you would say. There's not many teams that necessarily have that. Sai says, Dre is a great defender, but he's late on closeouts in key moments. Predictable two-man game between him and Steph. I know they won't trade him, but it's worth a conversation. Yeah, I agree with you. Like, I think if rival GMs called up Mike Dunleavy Jr. and started the conversation with, what's going on with Draymond? Is he gettable? I don't think Mike Dunleavy Jr. is all like straight away hang up the phone. Like, I think he would be willing to have a conversation, and he wouldn't be doing his due diligence if he wasn't willing to have that conversation. So I think Draymond's in an interesting spot. Is he going to end his career with the Warriors? I would still suggest yes, but there may come a point. I think the point is being accelerated by the fact like they've also got to decide what they do with Kaminga, because I've often said if you are going to retain Kaminga and you are going to re-sign him on a whatever contract is, $100+ million contract, which I think you'll get, then he has to be a starter for you. And therefore, does Draymond move back to the bench? Do you try and utilize Draymond as part of a trade? Like, these are all the factors that the Warriors are going to have to work out. And they're actually going to have to work out pretty quickly here in the next 5 or 6 weeks before the deadline. Because if the deadline passes, this is what I'm telling you right now. If the deadline passes and Jonathan Kaminga is still on the team, then you have absolutely handcuffed yourself into paying whatever he gets in restricted free agency. Like, you cannot let the guy walk for nothing in free agency. You absolutely cannot do that. So if Brooklyn, who have $40 million in cap space, come out and say, we're paying Jonathan Kaminga a max, the Warriors have handcuffed themselves to you just got to let him walk in that scenario, because the optics, can you imagine right now if the Warriors keep Kaminga beyond the deadline and then let him walk to a team and don't match an offer from a rival team in restricted free agency? Can you imagine the optics of that? Can you imagine how pissed fans will be if that happens? We've basically essentially seen that with Chris Paul, and right now a lot of fans are really disappointed in the fact they traded Poole, dumped his contract for Chris Paul, and then just let Chris Paul walk for nothing, chose to obviously not guarantee the $30 million he was going to make this season, let him walk, didn't get anything back, when you could have gone and got Zach LaVine. You could have gone and given up Chris Paul, Gary Payton II, maybe Kevon Looney for Zach LaVine, and you'd have Zach LaVine right now. Now, you might not have Schroeder, or you wouldn't have been able to get Melton, which obviously turned into Schroeder. You probably wouldn't have got Kyle Anderson. You probably wouldn't have got Buddy Hield. But right now, yes, those guys were good at the start of the season, but right now you'd probably just prefer to have Zach LaVine. And so a lot of fans are disappointed with what they did with Chris Paul. If they do that with Kaminga, who's 22 years old, then the fan base might riot. They might riot. They legit might riot. Matthew says, would you want Bron? I mean, he was big on Christmas Day. He's still amazing. Possibly. I wouldn't rule it out. Again, what does it take? It's probably going to take Wiggins and Kaminga. It's probably going to, obviously, more salary, GP2, Looney, Kyle Anderson, whatever combination of players. At this point, why not? At this point. You know what? It's not going to happen, particularly with the way they're playing, but I would still try and get him to sign to opt out of his contract and sign as a free agent on minimum chips, because then you could actually still put a really good team around. Now, that's an absolute pipe dream that's not going to happen, so I'm not going to talk any more about it, but it would be far more ideal if you could do that than having to trade, obviously, for LeBron's $50 million contract. Joe says trade Draymond. Helvin says, can we trade Dre plus fillers for Butler? Yeah, we can. Yeah, we could trade Draymond and GP2. It's still difficult. It's really difficult, but any trade for any player over $40+ million is difficult, because you're going to have to be sending out probably at least 4 players, and that is still the case if it's Draymond, unless you traded Draymond and Wiggins, which I don't think they're going to do both of those guys. So it's possible. It's possible, but unlikely. Sai says this offseason could be the most important season in the Joe Lacob era. The front office's next move will define this franchise's future. Very possible. Thendek says, instead of Schroeder, do you think we should have got a Melton-like player? Who was a Melton-like player? Like, Melton was such a perfect fit, and there's no one really available like Finney Smith, maybe, but he actually makes slightly more than what Melton does, to the point where you wouldn't have been able to do a straight swap there. Like, tell me what you would have been able to do from a straight swap, Melton plus draft picks, for which player? I'm not sure there's one available, or there was one available at that point. Draymond and Kaminga for Bron. Let's go, says Matthew. Shivanchez, in response to Sai, says, no one's trading Dre, brother. Sai says, Bron not going to move, bro. He's going to retire as a Laker. I think he might retire as a Cav, in my opinion. Whether he actually plays for the Cavs, I don't know. But I think at the end of his career, he might choose to retire as a Cav. Who knows? A few more comments here. Matthew says, he's not winning Jack. We know what that means. While he isn't joining Curry. Daniel says, people don't talk about this enough. The Poole contract and subsequent trade was terrible value. Yeah, I always talk about it's one of the great points I'm always going to just be on the hill about is that they should have traded for Kristaps Porzingis. They should have, instead of Chris Paul, I think the Wizards might have done Porzingis. And I just think having that stretch five would have been, now I know he's injury prone, but I think that was a move they missed out on instead of just getting Chris Paul. Like I don't have anything against them getting rid of Jordan Poole. I just think at that point, Poole still had enough value where you could have got a better player and a better fitting player than Chris Paul. Thandex says, I think AD and Steph would cook. AD would be a nice fit, but why would the Lakers do that? Mr. Level says we need to go after De'Aaron Fox. Again, as I said before earlier, you'd have to have that conversation to see what it would take from the Kings side. It would take a lot. Siobhan says Pat Riley said the Heat are not trading Butler. Mike Dunleavy Jr. said he wasn't trading Jordan Poole and then literally traded him 3 days later. So I know Pat Riley's not saying that now, but I wouldn't completely rule that out. Like, I think that's just what GMs, presidents say, as they have to publicly. But that doesn't mean that behind the scenes they're not willing to have the conversation and that things may change in the next 5 or 6 weeks. Sai says at the start of the season, the Warriors win total was 42.5. Do you think we can cross that? I was asked that earlier. Possibly. Yeah, I'd still take the overs. I'm optimistic, glass half full, even when the team's 3-12 in the last 15. Jeremy says, I don't think De'Aaron Fox will work in Kerr's system, Curry's motion offense either. You have a good point, but maybe, again, it's a case of you just have to try something different, and that bringing someone in has to try and change the offense and what the Warriors do there. And I think they have adjusted a little bit to Schroeder. I think they are, I haven't looked at the numbers, but I'd say they are running more pick and rolls with Schroeder in the action, but Schroeder just isn't doing anything off that. Like, he's just not hitting shots. Again, plenty of open ones, plenty of open looks from three so far in his Warrior tenure, and particularly in this game with Zubac playing drop coverage, and he just wasn't able to hit any of them. Daniel says the Poole situation is right behind James Wiseman when it comes to blame for asset management. Yes, turning Poole into CP, who we let walk for nothing. Matthew says, who cares? He's a 40-year-old on steroids. We need scoring. That's in relation to LeBron. Daniel says we actually had to attach assets to Poole because the contract was so bad. We did, but it was one top 20 protected first round pick. Like, are you calling Ryan Rollins and Patrick Baldwin Jr. assets? I'm not. So it was a top 20 protected first round pick. Why don't you just make that unprotected and maybe throw in another lottery protected pick and get Porzingis or someone else, someone that was better? Like, I just think they could have turned that into something way more significant. Sai says, I agree, Poole's contract was bad. It was bad, but like, again, the Wizards took it on before it even started. Like, there's still 4 years, 130 million remaining. And they took it on, gave up an expiring contract, and only got a top 20 protected first round pick out. Like, Ryan Rollins is no longer on the team, and Patrick Baldwin Jr. is going to be out of the league at the end of this year. I can basically guarantee that. So it wasn't as if, like, they didn't have to be talked into it with multiple first round picks and a quality young player as well. Like, I don't know. Gianni says, let's try Steph, Wiggs, J.A., Dre, and TJD. That was the starting lineup to open the season. And you know what? I don't hate it. Just get your best players out there. And that's probably their best players. Like, right now, Trace is a more impactful player than Schroeder. It might also help Schroeder if he's just in a six-man role and he can play primarily as the backup point guard rather than playing next to Steph. I don't think they'll go back to that lineup, but I wouldn't be against. At this point, I'm not against anything. Like, you might as well try anything. Siobhan says, do the complex mathematics for me, Matthew. You have 300 in cap space and your hard cap. Can't manipulate there. Tell me what package for LeBron's 52 million will you offer, not butchering the depth. Yeah, like, obviously, you have to butcher the depth to get LeBron or Jimmy Butler. Like, I think the argument is for one of those guys is, like, if you actually reach the playoffs, you are a scary team. like if you trade Wiggins and salary and draft assets or whatever for LeBron or Jimmy Butler, you get to the playoffs and another team is looking at the other end of the floor and it's Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and Jimmy Butler, or Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and LeBron James. That is like that's frightening to a degree. Even if you're the 8th seed or the 7th seed, like it's still scary to a degree. Joe says Fox for Kerr, Draymond, Wiggins. Mr. Level says I saw from Sports Logic League channel, GP2, Kaminga, Pods, Waters, Geese, Slow-Mo, and picks for Fox, and we still keep Wiggins. Yeah, but you're also sending out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players there. 6 players, and what, you're bringing back 1, and then you got to fill out the remainder of your roster. And I'm not sure I need to go into Fanspo to do that, but I'm assuming you don't have the $5 or $6 million left over to be able to go. If it has to be more than that, like $10 million left over to go sign guys to fill out your roster. So I don't think that can happen. Matthew says butchering the depth. What depth? You got a point. Vendex says 6 players for Fox, not worth it. We are literally trading our depth. Mr. Level said, we're talking about Giannis situations. Mr. Level says, got to trade for someone available. Yeah, I mean, we're just getting into trade situations again now, which is absolutely fair enough. Happy for you guys and for me to talk about it, because that's ultimately what this is probably going to take. It's probably going to have to take a seismic move on the roster to try and change these fortunes around, because I'm just not sure what Steve has to go to. Like, who was it before that mentioned? Gianni said, let's try Steph, Wiggs, JK, Drain, TJD. I think that's a good option to go to, but I'm not sure it's the perfect option. I'm not sure it's the option that's going to completely change the Warriors' fortunes. I do think that to change this around, to find something different, the Warriors are going to have to make a pretty significant trade. I think they will. What that involves, whether it's probably going to be Wiggins, and they're going to have to decide on Kaminga. It's probably going to be Wiggins, Kaminga, and salary filler for someone. Again, who that someone is, who knows? Like, Pat Riley said that Jimmy Butler's not available. I don't completely believe him. Like, I think that's what he's saying publicly, and that's, of course, what he's going to say publicly. And behind the scenes, he might be willing to have more conversations. At this point, like, I'm not sure why LeBron would, like, request a trade to the Warriors. Like, I don't know. Maybe the Warriors would therefore be a better option than the Lakers, but they're kind of at a similar point right now. Like, if he's going to request a trade to anyone, it should probably be someone better than the Warriors right now. I don't know. And then who else is available? We've obviously been talking about Fox. Maybe there's someone that we haven't spoken about that all of a sudden becomes available in the next 4 or 5 weeks. But yeah, I mean, you just don't know who that is right now. And the other point is, like, any of these trades, these big trades of $40+ million players, I think it's important to recognize that Schroeder's probably going to have to be involved in, and therefore it's not going to happen until the final 48 hours before the deadline. So I don't know. We'll wait and see. I'm going to finish it up there. We've been going for nearly 43 minutes. Thank you very much to those of you guys that have been in the chat commenting. Much appreciated as always. If you're watching this on replay, thanks to you guys as well, or via the podcast feed. The support is much appreciated, and the ongoing support is much appreciated. So thanks again to you guys. I'll be back after tomorrow's game starts at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time on Saturday for the Warriors versus the Suns. Should be a fascinating battle with both teams really struggling. Steph and Draymond back for the Warriors, so hopefully that brings Golden State some more. Going to be interested to see what happens with Kaminga. Does he catapult back into the starting lineup after this game like he did after the Rockets game where he went for 33 points? I don't think he necessarily will, but he's probably going to play 30+ minutes again, depending on how he is physically, because he looked pretty knackered and tired down the stretch of this game, and rightfully so too, because they were just going through him on basically every possession offensively. Matthew says, let's cook KD tomorrow. Hopefully there's a personal battle there. Shivanches also, Peter, ready hit a century, another rain bailout for the Aussies. What is the score? Can you tell me what the score is? Last time I checked, they were 7 for 340 or something before I jumped on this podcast. Very disappointing. Very Nishish Reddy, he can bat. He can really bat. He's been impressive for India. Just, I don't know. Sometimes Australia just really struggles against the tail of opposing teams, and we're in a great position. Obviously, what were we, like 250 ahead when these two guys got together in a fantastic spot, and we've let go of the rope a little bit there. So I will go and watch the last 15 minutes or so of the cricket. Is the rain come back? Shivansh, let me know. Has the rain come back? What is the score? Sorry to those of you that are Americans and do not care for the cricket whatsoever. Just checking this. Oh, India 3, 58 for 9, and it's been delayed by rain. So we're still 116 in front. Reddy has 105, and he's with Siraj. What did Washington Sundar make? 50. 50 off 162 balls. So we're gonna have 2 days left. I don't know. Let's hope for a result. But very disappointing that we're only 116 ahead. That we should have had a 200-run lead first innings. Very disappointing. This is like the second match in a row. Obviously, we had the game in Brisbane that was washed out, and Australia should have won that. Anyway, I'm going to finish it up there because now we're talking about cricket. Thanks again, guys, and I'll be back for another live stream after the Suns game tomorrow. Let's hope for a different result from a Golden State perspective.